Hey. Let's see. I don't know if anyone's on here yet. Give everyone a couple minutes here.
No one yet?
I've never used this before, so I don't think so. It says 0 right here. So maybe I'll wait a few minutes. Oh, it looks like we do have some people on.
Yeah?
Okay. Well, welcome you guys to a back-end flexibility online class for magnetic pole fit. I think you guys can type in questions here if you have any questions. I've never used this before, so I apologize if I am technologically that's something else. But yeah, so if you have a yoga mat, you probably want to be on your yoga mat. If not, it's not too big of a deal. If you have some yoga blocks, that would be awesome too. We might do a couple things with yoga blocks and or a strap. Okay, but let's go ahead and get warmed up. If anybody has any wrist issues, you can always use a fist anytime you go into like a plank. You may notice that I do that sometimes because I do have a wrist that's a little bit funky. So you guys are welcome to do that too. So just start sitting on your heels, nice and relaxed. We're going to do a few isolations to start. So let's start with some head circles. And switch direction. And roll your shoulders back. Make sure you squeeze your shoulders all the way up to your ears and all the way down. And let's go ahead and do elbow circles. So bring your hands to your shoulders. And let's do some full arm circles. Try to keep your palms facing forward the whole time. Resist the urge to rotate your shoulders. I'm trying to get a little bit of a stretch here. And let's switch direction. And let's go to elbows. And just shoulders. Okay, and let's do some rib isolations. So shift your ribs side to side. So notice that I'm shortening the space right below my ribs to do these. So a little bit of a side bend. And let's go front, back. So here I'm thinking about squeezing my shoulder blades together and then separating my shoulder blades. And let's go front, side, back, side, front, side, back, side, and then smooth that out. And front, other side, back, side, front, side, back, side. Smooth it out. Okay, now go ahead and clasp your hands behind your back. Try to keep your palms connected the whole time. And you're going to start rotating from your shoulders to bring your hands behind you. I'll give you guys another view here. So I'm rotating from my shoulders and bringing my hands back as much as I'm comfortable for now. And you can let your head relax back. And slowly release that. Take your arms out to the sides, and we're just going to rotate. Now be careful to rotate from your shoulders and not just from your hands. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of side bending and kind of sweeping side to side. So plant one hand to your side and side bend as much as you're comfortable. Maybe your elbow will get close to the ground here. Bring your other arm overhead. Notice that my armpit is turning up to the ceiling. Now from there, I'm going to sweep forward and switch to the other side. Okay, and repeat. Okay. Slowly come up and make your way to a downward dog. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of core work, so it's really important that your core is nice and warm when you're going to get ready for some back bending. So let's go ahead and start in a plank. So again, if your wrists are bothering you, you can go to a fist. Keep your wrists nice and straight. You're welcome to just do this on your knees, or if it's accessible to you, go all the way up and really round your spine. Squeeze your glutes and your core as hard as you can. And breathe. Let's start shifting forward and back. And a little side to side. And let's do a couple slow mountain climbers. So I'm going to crunch my right knee to my right elbow and bring it back. So we're doing the same side first. And do it nice and slow, really focusing on getting your core nice and warm. And now let's go ahead and start tapping opposite. So my right knee goes to my left, and I switch. And slowly lower yourself down, and you can take a child's pose. Go ahead and roll onto your back. And make sure you're rounding your spine, so there should be no space here. So really engage your core as much as you can. You can take your legs up into a tabletop position. Take your arms overhead. And let's hold. If this is easy for you, you can start lowering your legs, but make sure you don't lose that contact. And bring your knees into your chest. And go ahead and walk yourself up. And let's go to a tabletop position. So make sure your shoulders are directly over your wrists and knees directly underneath your hips. And go ahead and round your spine and then arch. Okay, let's do some cat-cows. And let's do a couple circles through that position. And switch. Okay, we're gonna do some leg lifts now. So really make sure you engage your core to start. So notice my spine is rounded, so I'm not sticking my butt up like that. It's really rounded, my core is really tight. So I'm gonna start by extending my right leg and my left arm, so opposite. And then I'm gonna keep my core engaged and tucking as I try to lift my leg with my glutes, okay? So lift and come down and switch sides. So it's not about how high you lift your leg, it's about getting your glutes nice and warm. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that again, but now we're gonna add a little bit of a back bend. So I'm first going to lift just as before, keeping my core engaged, and then I'm gonna start back bending, and you can bend your leg and come down. Okay, so we're gonna start warming up our hips. Does anybody have any questions? How's everybody doing with these? Look like everyone's doing well. Okay, so get some water and we'll get our hips warmed up here in a second. Okay, so we're gonna start with a nice little half lunge. So whenever we're stretching our hips, it's really important that we pay attention to alignment because it's really easy to say, open your hips, which is not square. So we want to try to stay square here. So we actually get a stretch in the hip flexor. It's also easy to do some funky stuff with your foot. So to start, let's go ahead and make sure your hip is directly over your knee for the back leg. Front foot can actually be a little bit farther. You may want to adjust as we go. So whatever feels good for the front leg there. Back foot, you need to make sure that's in line with your knee. So take a moment to look. I know mine tends to go a little bit out to the side, so I always have to fix that. Place your hands on your front knee and round your spine. So notice as you round, you should feel more of a stretch here. It's because your back is no longer taking the stretch. So to get used to that feeling, let's go ahead and do a couple isolations. So I'm arching here, and now I'm rounding. Let's do that a few times. Now go ahead and hold that rounded position. I'm also thinking about pulling my front heel towards my other leg. It helps me activate my hamstrings. Now go ahead and relax your core a little bit. Go ahead and let your hips sink towards the ground, letting your back arch a little bit. And if you want to encourage the arch, you can put your hands on your hips a little bit. And return to the rounded spine position. And then let your hips sink forward, back arching a little bit. Okay, let's do that one more time. This time, if you have the balance, go ahead and take your arms overhead, round your spine again. And then let your hips drop. You can lean back a little bit here, but don't go crazy with your back bend yet. Okay, go ahead and tuck your toes under. Bring your knee off the ground. Now make sure you're spaced out in a comfortable position. Try to get your shoulder to kind of rest on your knee here, and make sure your back knee is totally straight. So just hang out here. You can rock forward and back a little bit if you want. Take your arms out to a T and lift up and down. Really try to keep that back leg straight by engaging your quads. Okay, now go ahead and put your hands on your front leg. Go ahead and bend your back knee slightly, rounding your spine. Try to extend, keeping that core engagement. And let's repeat. So let's try for 10. Some of you guys have done this with me before. Go ahead and lower. Let's go ahead and check in with our low lunge one more time. Really dropping those hips. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do the other side here in a second. Looks like I've got a few questions or comments. Just see. Hey, everybody. Cool. Oh, it's nice to see everybody on here. Awesome. Okay, let's go ahead and do our other side. Hopefully that felt pretty okay. Get that screen down. So start by checking your alignment. So hip over your back knee. Turn and look at your back foot. Make sure it's in line. And let's go ahead and do isolations. So round and arch. And go ahead and hold the rounded position. Now go ahead and step your front foot forward if you want to, and you can start to let your back arch a little bit. Maybe put your hands on your hips here. And push back to the rounded position. And lower. Push back one more time. And down one more time. Go ahead and take your arms overhead if you want for one last round of that. Go ahead and plant your hands around your front foot. Tuck your toes under on the back leg and bring your back leg up. So figure out the spacing that works for you today. Keep your back legs super straight. And you can rock forward and back a few times. Take your arms out to a T and lift up and down. And go ahead and plant your hands on your front leg. Slightly bend your back leg and round your spine. And then try to straighten, keeping your back rounded. Let's go for 10 of these. If these are easy, you can start going a little bit lower, or you could start bringing your shoulders over your hips. And go ahead and lower. Let's go ahead and take a child's pose. And go ahead and go onto your back. We're going to get ready for a couple hip bridges. Try to keep your feet about hip width apart. Try not to go too wide. If you have a yoga block here, this is a good way to check if you're going too wide, like if your knees are starting to drift out. So you can put your yoga block on like the thin setting, so I'm using this setting, right between your knees and squeeze your knees together. It probably will feel a little bit harder. So bring your heels close to your butt and then tuck your pelvis around your spine and lift your hips up. So we're going to stay kind of low for this first one. Make sure you're breathing. Now you can go up on your toes and then go back down with control. Do that a few times. And go ahead and lower. You can release your block for the next one and just bring your knees into your chest for a minute. Okay, so set up for your bridge again. Go ahead and lift your hips up. You can walk your hands in a little bit closer if you want, getting a little bit of arch more near mid-upper back. And then be aware of if your knees go out. So you want to try to keep squeezing them Not all the way together, but again, not going more than hip width apart so that you're still stretching your hips. Now go ahead and put your hands on your low back. Try to keep your elbows underneath you. And now you can rest a little bit. So your weight should be more over your elbows here. So let's go ahead and bring one leg up. So really crunch your knee in and extend. And let's do some, if that feels okay, do some kicks. And switch. And kick. And slowly lower. So as I lower, I want to bring one vertebra down at a time, and I start to really round my spine. And you could take your knees into your chest. Okay, so hopefully everybody's still feeling great. We're going to do a little bit more warming up our back muscles and then get into some cobras. So lay on your belly. Your legs don't need to be together, but again, try not to go too wide. And arms can be about shoulder width apart or like a little bit out in a wide position is okay. And your forehead should rest on the ground. And then I'm gonna lift my right arm and my left leg at the same time. But I'm lifting, like I'm not trying to lift super high or anything. I'm just trying to start warming up my back muscles. So getting them to engage a little bit to the left. Great. And keep switching sides. Now start doing same side. Okay, and now let's start getting into our cobras. So we're going to start with a low cobra. So kind of think of like pulling against the floor and sliding your elbows in. We keep pulling your shoulder blades back and down, creating space between your shoulders and your head. So I'm really thinking about trying to puff my chest forward to activate my middle back. Hips should be firmly resting into the ground. So make sure your hips aren't like lifting up or anything in this position. And we're going to do a little sequence here, alternating between pulling and then pushing and rounding. So now when you push and round, your hips will come up a little bit. That's okay. So push as hard as you can through your shoulders. And now return to the pulling position. And push. And pull. And push. Go ahead and lower yourself. Lift up a little bit with your back. So I'm hovering my hands up. I'm going to slide my hands close-ish to my shoulders, but they don't have to be this far. It can be a little bit in front if you want. And push up all the way to your full cobra if it's accessible to you. If you don't feel ready, that's okay. You can stay with the low one. Now let's do some shoulder circles here. So it's really easy to kind of relax here, but we don't want to do that. We want to bring your shoulders down. So to get that activation in the lats, we'll do circles and then switch direction. And now go ahead and hold. Now I still want to think about pulling back and like really trying to activate my middle back. So I'm not just dumping into my low back. So I'm trying to push my chest forward. And then you can start to push the floor away, starting to round your spine a little bit to give your back a break. And pull one more time. Okay, so you can relax for a second. Go ahead and set up with your toes tucked under. So you can do this in a low cobra or full cobra. So start lifting with your back and then push up the rest of the way with your arms. So we're trying to get a little extra hip extension here. Now, if you're able, see if you can lift your legs up. So we'll do a few lifts. One side is easier for me. So when you're trying to lift, you should be really squeezing your glutes. And hold. And then slowly relax down and push back to a child's pose. And let's go ahead and hold a plank. So full plank on your hands, or I'm going to do one on my forearms. And you can also, be on your knees if you want to do that instead. But let's really round our spine for a few moments. And slowly relax. So hopefully everybody's backs are feeling great. Make sure you don't push anything too hard. I'm just starting to get warmed up a little bit right now. Okay, so we're gonna start opening up our shoulders a little bit. So doing, back bendy tricks requires a lot of hip flexibility, shoulder flexibility, and back flexibility. So you have to kind of warm everything up a little bit. So for the next exercise, I find having some sort of strap to be really helpful. So if you have a strap, grab it. If you don't have a strap, I've used like a broomstick. That actually works like a just like a longish bar that's really stiff. If you don't have anything like that, you can basically do the same thing just without the extra tension. Okay, so just kind of like arm circles. So this is a shoulder flossing exercise. So I'm going to choose the right width for me, which is kind of far. And I'm going to take my arms back. And it feels like a little bit sticky right here. So I kind of hang out there, slowly pass through that, and lift back up. Now, the goal here is to like not bend your arms, keep your arms straight. So like right here, sometimes my arm like wants to bend. And that's going to like take the stretch out of it. So I don't want to do that. I want to make it stretch. If it's too much, then you should just put your hands a little bit wider. Broomstick. And you should do these at your own pace. So, whatever feels good. And like I said, hang out in the spot that feels a little bit sticky. So let's try to do some circles. So now I'm going to go really over to my left side, circle back, and go over to the right. Again, trying to keep my arms straight here. Try not to let my shoulders cheat out of any stretching. And let's switch direction. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that again. So now that you warmed your shoulders up a little bit, you might feel like you can walk your hands in. So if you can, do that. If not, that's fine. Just, choose the same distance. So I'll see if this distance works for me now. Oof. So yeah, those of you who pull or do aerial a lot know the tight shoulder struggle. And let's do a few more circles. And switch. Okay, so you can go ahead and set your strap to the side or whatever you're using. So we'll go ahead and do a couple more shoulder stretches. There's one you can do on the floor, or if you're next to a wall is actually a really great way to stretch a lot of different things, including like your bridges and everything like that. So I'll show both. So whatever you have access to, you can choose to do. So those of you who've been in my class have done this one with me. So try to get your hips kind of over your knees. Take your arms shoulder width apart. Okay, so that's really key that you don't go wide at all here. So shoulder width apart is pretty close for most people. Like my thumbs will almost touch. From there, my arms stay really straight, and I'm trying to reach my armpits towards the ground. And my head is coming up, and so I'm looking at the wall in front of me. You might even try to like rest your chin on the ground. Okay, so you guys can keep holding that. I'm going to show the wall option. So if you're next to a wall, basically it's the same thing, trying to get armpits close to the wall. Okay, so go ahead and relax that for a second. Make sure you're drinking water. I should have called it out a couple more times. Okay, so you can do either of those exercises again, or we can advance it a little bit if your shoulders are feeling a little bit more stretchy. So whether you're on the wall or the floor, you can start kind of in the same position, like on your knees. And instead of going down on your hands, you're going to go down to your elbows. And then I'm going to cross. So my hands are going to go to each shoulder. And then I'm going to try to put my chin up on my forearm, my top forearm. Okay. Now, if you're doing the more advanced option, go ahead and switch the crossing. And go ahead and slowly come out of that. Okay, so I'd like to work on a little bit of a wall stretch here. So hopefully everybody has access to a wall. Let's see, I don't think of any questions. Let's see. Okay. So if you've been in my class, you're probably familiar with this exercise. See, I'm going to go ahead and move my laptop here for a second. Give you guys a different angle. I think you guys will be able to see this. Okay, so I'm going to start right next to the wall. Sometimes, if this is hard for you, you might need blocks to help like get up into the position. So you can start with blocks next to you. Not necessary though, if you don't have them. So I put my knee next to the wall, and I'm trying to be really careful to keep my leg vertical here. So take a moment to check if it's vertical. Then next I'm going to move this leg. So I'm kind of in like a half lunge position, and my hips are going back towards this foot on the wall. So the closer you can get, the better. You're probably going to feel a pretty intense stretch in your quads here. And if possible, if you can come up, so you can push up off your knee, that'll be a little bit better. Okay, now if you want to make it harder, So you can see that I've got like a little bit of an arch in my spine here. The stretch is pretty intense for me. So the goal would be to round completely. So you'll feel if you start to engage your core and round, it's a little bit more intense. So let's go ahead and try to breathe through that. Now you can go ahead and let your hips go a little bit away from the wall and encourage your back to arch, your low back here. Okay, if you want, you can put your hands on your hips, encourage them to go down a little bit farther. And go ahead and round. And arch. And let's try to get one more in. I know these are pretty killer. Okay, and carefully come out of it. We're going to switch sides. Okay, so again, I'm going to start by checking my alignment, making sure the leg is vertical, getting my knee as close to the wall as possible. Then I'm going to get my other leg up. And for the front leg, so your foot doesn't need to be directly under your knee. So whatever feels good for you here. Okay, so try to round your spine as much as possible. And try to get your shoulders over your hips. And lower, arching. And push and round. And arch. Last time. Last time arching. And slowly come out of that. So hopefully your hips are feeling nice and warm. I always notice a big difference in my bridges after I do that exercise. That's brutal. Okay, so we're gonna go back to our cobras. So for the next exercise, if it feels really hard or if you feel like you can't do it, you're welcome to start with a yoga block like under your hips, like right about there or something. But then start with your feet pushing into the wall and kind of flexing. Okay. If you want to try it without, it might feel a little bit harder. But you can do that too. Okay, so start with feet pushing into the wall and take your hands back and lift. So I'm really squeezing my legs. And hold. And pulse higher. And hands in front. And push up. Go ahead and lower. Bend your legs. And then grab on the inside of your leg. Grab like this. Both sides. Kick into your hands. And also try to separate your legs apart a little bit. And release. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're actually going to go back to that wall stretch. One more time, we're going to add a little bit of a back bend. So go ahead and show you guys. You can start with your knee a little bit farther from the wall if you want. So as if you practice this exercise a few times, you'll probably find like what the right distance is for you right now. So it doesn't need to be all the way there. Okay. In fact, that'll probably be a little harder unless you're crazy flexy. Step your other foot in front. So I usually like to put my foot just like a little bit past my knee here. Take a moment to check that alignment. And you can start by putting your hands on your hips and really letting your hips drop down towards the floor. Now, if you feel up for it, go ahead and take your arms up. Start to try to find the wall. And come out of it when you're ready. And let's switch sides. So start by pushing your hips down towards the floor. And if you want to, take your arms overhead. And slowly come out of it. And the goal there is to keep your arms straight once you get them on the wall. Try to push them straight. Okay. So hopefully everybody's feeling great. See, I don't think there's any questions. Death pretzel. Okay. So I would like to finish with a couple back bends. So I assume everyone's kind of on their own here, because otherwise, you can have a partner kind of assist you in your back bend if you're not comfortable doing them on your own. So if that is the case, that you're not comfortable doing bridges or back bends on your own yet, you can, I'll show you guys a couple modifications. I'll point them out as I do them. Move the camera here. Okay, so kind of set up for your hip bridge. And that'll be the first option if you don't want to go full bridge, is to just kind of stay in your hip bridge. Okay, so try to keep your feet not going past the mat, so not too far. And try to just be aware of if your knees tend to go out. I know mine tend to, so I have to kind of work hard to squeeze them in. Okay, and this first bridge should be an easy one. Don't push it too hard. Your hands should go right underneath your shoulders. Now, round your spine first, because really engage your core, and lift your hips up. Okay, so that's the first option. Then the next option would be to kind of go towards like a headstand-ish shape, but with your feet down. So you can just hang out here if you want to. But if you want to go full bridge, ideally you get your shoulders close to being like over your hands. And then, so you might be like to go up because my hips are tight, but then I want to put them down, okay? So just hang out here for a few moments. And slowly come down, rounding your spine. And bring your knees into your chest. Okay, let's see how we're doing on time. And it looks like we're almost out of time. I just want to show you guys a couple more options with the bridge, and we'll do a really quick, like, cool down stretch. So one thing that helps me work on my hips a little bit, so to fight like the urge for your knees to like go out, is to start my bridge with a block between my knees and squeezing, okay? So you can press up into your bridge as before, or some of you have done this one with me. So you can start by rotating your fingers towards the opposite wall. So I'm starting to open my shoulder and taking the other arm up and overhead. Okay, so that's one option. So for the next option, I would encourage you guys to practice, walking your feet in with bent legs, and then trying to put your legs straight. So stretching your shoulders a little bit more here when you go straight. And lower slowly. So to cool down really quickly, go ahead and butterfly your legs, keeping your feet together. Put your hands on your hips, straighten your arms, and release your low back. And release, And the final thing that we'll do today is just finish with a plank. So it's always really good to kind of undo all the back bending by doing something like a plank. So whichever version you want to do, really rounding and engaging your core. And release. Okay, you guys, thank you so much for taking this online class. If you guys had any questions, I'd love to hear from you guys. So you can post those or, on the feed or in the comments. Yeah, so I hope you guys had fun. Thanks for watching. Bye.